Welcome back to my channel. Today's discussion will be about Series 20, also known as the Day of the Dead series. So without further ado, let's get into it. Series 20 was released in the fall of 2010. I forgot to mention in my previous video, Series 19. That series was released in the spring of the same year. This was the very first series since Series 5 to have a coffin that actually was redesigned to fit the theme. I don't have many coffins as I've unboxed my dolls, but I do have this one from the series. So the box has a wood type design, really cool. And it says Day of the Dead Series 20 in the back with a sugar skull, really cool. And then the coffin lid even had a different design. Really cool with the sugar skulls printed on it. So the first doll we're going to talk about is Camila. Now, the way I'm going to do the dolls once again is those I find least interesting to most interesting, saving the MVD doll for last, or at least what I think is the MVD doll. So here's Camila's chipboard. Now, I also have the variants, as you can see. So I have all the chipboards on hand. Okay. Her death date is November 1st of 1939. So the year doesn't have any significance. However, November 1st is the beginning of the Day of the Dead holiday in Mexico. She comes in this really cute dress. Okay, and she has like this felt jacket, it's a separate piece, thick black tights, and of course the Mary Jane shoes. Now, the interesting thing about Camila is, so according to the Wikipedia page of Living Dead Dolls, which again is a fan-made page, they mention she's named after the flower that's on her face paint. Now, the flower itself is from Japan. It's called Camila, and I think that was a weird choice to use a flower that has nothing to do with Mexico. And, you know, it's curious, the main flower that's associated with the season of this, I'm sorry, the holiday, is a marigold. So I felt that was a little bit of a misstep in her design. Her name, though, in Spanish, is attendant at a religious ceremony, helper to the priest, or young ceremonial servant. So her name in Spanish does have Spanish roots. So, and again, the person who contributed to the Wikipedia page, maybe they didn't do research, or again, I don't know how old the entry was, but I think the flower, whether that's true or not, I think it's, I don't know, I think they could have looked into it a little bit more. So what I love about this particular series is that they each have unique face paints on their screening. Really nice. And, you know, Camila, of the five, she's the most simple of the series, but she's still very cute. She has a flower which is used a lot in Living Dead Dolls, that it's like a little Velcro that goes onto the hair, so it's not attached with a rubber band. It's actually like a little teeth on the end of it, and you just stick it, you know, and slide it into place there. And, you know, that's all I have to say about Camila. Next is Savannah. Now, Savannah is a lovely doll. Here's her chipboard. Let me just hold her. I have to hold her because she's a barefoot doll, and they tend not to stand very well. And Savannah is an interesting one in that, like when I hear the name Savannah, I don't think Mexico. I think of Savannah, Georgia. So I thought that was an interesting name for her. I thought maybe they could have picked a different name. I don't know, like maybe Guadalupe, Maria, but you know, they picked Savannah. So the interesting thing with Savannah, hold on, is that on the Mezco webpage, her death date is incorrect. So if you ever looked at the Mezco archives, her date is listed as January 20th, 1913, which is the same date and year as Katrina. And it's actually November 1st, 1983. Again, the year has no significance, but the date is just the day of when the holiday is observed. So just, you know, keep that in mind. Now, her date is, where I got the date is from her actual death certificate. Now, again, going back to her name, it has Spanish roots, but it's actually from the Taino culture. If you are familiar with Hispanic history, Taino is actually from Puerto Rico, not Mexico. So, you know, again, with this series, I felt like there were certain missteps in terms of, I don't know if the aim was to make a culturally appropriate, or I should say correct, representation of the series. I'm sorry, of the holiday through the dolls. I felt like there was sincerity in the design and the execution, but I felt like there was some missteps in the mix. And again, like for example, the Camila, or it's Camila, from Japan, and then you have her name, which is actually Puerto Rican or Taino in roots, which is a native people of Puerto Rico. And but she is a lovely doll. I love her red hair; it's really nice. Her outfit is very nice, and I love the face screening. See the care and detail that they went into the screenings. You know, again, you see the effort, but again, there's just little things here and there that I wish they had more research on, or had someone who at least was Mexican descent that could have contribute to this series. And I doubt anyone Mexican was involved. She's a barefoot doll. And again, her shawl and dress, nice material, especially the shawl. Like it actually feels like a real shawl, the material. It is tied down with a clear rubber band, so I'm not going to undo it. And her dress is like off the shoulder. I forgot to mention with Camila, she's not expensive. She goes for like $35 to $40. I paid $37. Savannah wasn't expensive either. She's a little more expensive, but she can go from anywhere from $50 to $100. I paid $48 for Savannah. And that's all I have to say for Savannah. Next is El Luchador Muerto. So he obviously is a luchador, the Mexican wrestler. Here's his death certificate. Chipboard. And that's another thing too with the design of the chipboards. They match the doll in terms of the face paint. Really nice. Well done. Again, there was care that went into this series in terms of design. Now, his death date actually has significance. There is a famous wrestler by the name, hold on. His real name was Rodolfo Guzman Jureta, and he went by El Santo. And he was famous because he never took off his mask. Even outside the ring, he would interview with his mask, which is a choice. And he was very popular, almost like a folk legend. So his death date is the same as um, um, El Santo's death date. And he actually unmasked himself maybe a year before he died. But he was long since retired. Now, here's a picture of El Luchador without his mask. I'm not taking it off because, again, this is that type of material that easily peels if messed with. So as you see, it's laced up like so. He is bald, but look at that mask. Beautiful mask. He has this spider on his chest with, of course, with the sulfur symbol. And he has these tights, and the briefs are all one piece. And he has these boots, and he stands very well on the display. He doesn't command much on the secondary market. I paid $35 for him. He goes for $35 to $45. His name means dead wrestler in English. But he's a really well-made doll. I think he's so underrated among the ladies. And I highly recommend him. He's a really cool boy doll. And that is El Luchador Muerto. Next is my husband's favorite, Santeria. Now, Santeria is the one I wanted to discuss the most about. Santeria, I feel her name is very problematic because it has nothing to do with Mexican culture. Um, she, so she, or her name is a reference to an Afro-Caribbean religion that blends West African Yoruba traditions with Roman Catholicism. Again, nothing to do with Mexican culture. And I feel like this is Macumba all over again. If you remember when I discussed series 4, Macumba's name had nothing to do with voodoo. It was a completely different religion. And I feel like, again, more research could have gone into Santeria. And it's a shame because her design, she's actually my favorite of the face designs. Like, look at this. Very beautiful. I loved how she has this little gold teeth. Gold tooth among her teeth. Really nice. And yes, the Catholicism is mixed in a little bit with the Day of the Dead culture, but again, the name, they could have done something else with the name. Again, there's many Mexican names they could have used. Santeria, just that's such an inappropriate name for her. Now she also had a mistake on the Mezco website in terms of her death date. So her death date is July 3rd, 1985, in terms of her actual death certificate. And her death date was the limited release of George A. Romero's Day of the Dead movie before it opened wide later that month. And when that movie opened wide, it did compete with the first Back to the Future movie, unfortunately. And she goes for about $50 to $60. I should say my husband paid $60 for her. And, again, her design is beautiful. She has this separate cape. She has a simple black dress, blue ribbon, the center. This veil is gorgeous. Like, it's really nice. Again, there is care in the design. There's thoughtfulness, but again, really getting the cultural minor details like names, it didn't seem to cross their minds in terms of this series. Um, and that's unfortunate because, again, I think I think the series is great. It's one of my favorite series, but again, there's criticisms I do have with it. And then here's her chipboard as well. And that's it. That's all I have to say for Santeria. And I think the MVD, in my opinion, is Katrina. Now, Katrina, oh my gosh, she's my favorite doll of this series. And the reason why I love Katrina so much is that side eye. Look at that side eye. What an attitude right there. Like, it's just such a beautiful face. I love it. She has a similar rose to Camila. Same thing, same mechanism. Simple outfit. Her skirt actually reminds me of Little Red Riding Hood's, the bottom of her dress. It also had a skull. And she has this, actually, it's not a separate piece. It's all attached. This rubber band keeps this part from falling. Eventually, it's going to disintegrate. Now, her death date is the death date of a cartoonist named Jose Guadalupe Rosada, and he created the image of the La Katrina, which is part of satirical lithographs that addressed political and societal issues in the Mexican presses. And that caricature, very famous, and that debuted in 1910. And La Katrina actually is a modern take of an ancient Aztec queen of the underworld. I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce it, but here's a picture of her with her name. And La Katrina has become the face of the holiday. So it is interesting that such an iconic character, who over the years has been portrayed with fancy hats, gowns, flowers of adornment, and was given such a simple design in terms of a doll. And I'm not complaining about it, but I just thought it was kind of interesting that character or her depiction, again, so very over the top and grand, that again, a doll to represent her is very simple in design. So her face is beautiful. She has the sulfur symbol, whereas the others do not have that. And again, I love Katrina. She is my favorite. And actually, her and Savannah seem to compete in the MVD, but I didn't think Savannah was interesting in comparison to, say, Santeria. That's why I left Santeria second to last. And she comes with these socks, Mary Jane shoes, and again, I just love that side eye. And here's her chipboard. Now, I paid $44 for her, but she goes from $75 to $100. And that's it. That's all I have to say about Katrina. So I'm going to discuss, not for very long, the red variant series. So they decreased the production run of this variant set to 300, which is down from 375 with Series 19. So I'm just going to quickly go over each one of the dolls. So basically, the red versions of the dolls, it just simply is just a recoloring of all of them. I don't think the red changes anything dramatically about them like the black and white of Series 19, but it's still nice. It's actually one of the first variants that I sought to get, and they were actually the cheapest variant set I ever completed. So here's Camila, and basically she just has the inverse of her outfit, and instead of solid red tights, they actually gave her black and red tights. Okay. Now her variant goes for $150 to $200, and again, this I got her at a deal. I got it for $60 sealed, and that is the Camila variant. Next is Savannah. The most significant change is that she has black hair instead of red hair. Okay, and again, her outfit is just red and black. And forgot to mention, like, even the design changed a bit. It's more red and black. But again, nothing different, nothing dramatic, and that's it. El Luchador. Now, I'm not sure if his mask or the scar underneath his mask that I showed earlier is different. If you know, share in the comments, but I'm not going to unmask him. I couldn't find a picture of his variant unmasked, so I only was able to find his regular unmasked. So again, it's just red and black, which I think looks really nice. And Savannah, I got for $48 sealed, and she goes from $150 to $250. He is going to be the cheapest. You'll be able to find him. I got him for $47 sealed, and he goes from $50 to $100. Okay, and again, everything is just red and black. And here's Katrina. Again, nothing dramatic. And her rose is black. Camila's, they didn't change. They kept it red. I thought it was interesting, but she's just red. She goes from $150 to $200. I paid $77. She actually is the one I paid the most. And I got her $77 sealed. And that's Katrina. And last but certainly not least, Santeria. Okay, and so the lines on her face are blue instead of red as it was on her OG. Again, same dress, just in red and black. Again, nothing dramatic. She goes for $100 to $200. I paid exactly the same. Well, I paid exactly the same price my husband paid for original, $60, and that is Santeria. Now, my biggest qualm about this series is that I felt like this could have been a great opportunity for Mezco to have true representation, in that they could have made the dolls, or some of them, have a tanned skin tone. Mexico, in addition to many Latin American countries all over the world, they are a diverse group of people. So you have Hispanics who have white skin. You have those who have very dark, in between. Just a plethora of skin tones in the Hispanic world. And I felt like they could have represented them instead of doing the default white. So it just looks like a bunch of white characters cosplaying or doing cultural appropriation of the Mexican holiday. Again, you could have some of them with lighter skin tones, but they could have made a mix of tan skin tones. You have the doll of Demonique, who is based on a Hispanic person, and like they could have incorporated her mold into some of the girls, especially like a character like Katrina and El Luchador Muerto, who actually have skin tones and not the pale white like these two, Savannah and Camila. And, you know, I felt like Demonique, so nice and unique, the fact that she sticks out along with Macumba in terms of the sea of dolls that by default they're white characters. And again, they could have had a real um, opportunity here and portrayed that in this series. That's pretty much my biggest qualm with it. I I actually collect the Day of the Dead Barbies from Mattel, and all the dolls. Initially, she started out having like the Barbie face with a tan, but as the years or the different iterations continued, they started experimenting with different molds, so it didn't look like just a white doll painted brown. And they're really beautiful dolls, and they're very diverse in the faces, and they included Ken as well. And I just wish these dolls could have had that as well. But overall, it's a great series. um I think this is one of those series that I think is great if you're a beginner in collecting Living Dead dolls, because I feel they are attainable compared to other series. And again, there's so much care into details that went into the series overall. But when you dive deep and read their stories, and and think about their names, more research or someone from the outside they could have consulted with to make it more culturally accurate, if that makes sense. But again, I think it's a step up of Calavera, who you see peeking in the back. So I really love how they did expand upon the Sugar Skulls theme, and didn't just do, they made distinct face paints and you know and design. I really do appreciate that, but again, I wish there was a mixture of skin tones in the series. So in terms of sulfur symbols, um, it's a solid 4.5. I mean, a, it would be lower, but again, as I mentioned, there was other things in this series that they've never done before, especially with the coffins. Is really what keeps them that high in terms of scoring. But I am knocking it down for the lack of really finite on the cultural accuracies they could have did better with. And that is my review of series 20. Let me know if you happen to be Mexican, what are your thoughts in this series? Do you appreciate what they did? Do you agree with my assessment? Again, I'm not Hispanic. I'm not Mexican. I am Puerto Rican. So I have a little knowledge in terms of the diversity in Hispanic culture. Um, but I always loved the Mexican culture. I always loved the Day of the Dead, and that's why I love this series and those Barbies from Mattel. So once again, do your research. Um, yep, do your research. And like I said, this is a really great series, a real good starter series to get into for Living Dead dolls. Thanks for watching. Hope you are subscribed, and stay tuned for more discussions of Living Dead dolls. And as always, happy hunting.